I graduated from high school in 1977, as you did. And there's no doubt in my mind that prior to that, and even leading up to that era, and now as we go forward, there have always been a lot of guys in this area that were good enough to play in the NBA.
The first person I personally knew to make it to the NBA was my 25th and older neighbor, James Edwards. The Roosevelt High star developed his game at local University of Washington and then went on to win NBA championships with the Detroit Pistons and Chicago Bulls over his lengthy 19-year NBA career.
Nowadays, there's better individual players to a certain degree. I mean, you had your handful of guys. I mean, you look at Clint Richardson, guys like that were phenomenal individual talents.
When my family moved to Lake Washington Boulevard in the Mount Baker area of Seattle, I became friends with Clint Richardson. I watched Richardson closely as he set the all-time scoring record, averaging 34 points per game at O'Day High, and then became the first player in school history to lead Seattle University in scoring 4 straight years. At Seattle U, he would team up with my high school classmates, Cleveland High 7-footer Juwan Oldham, who spent 9 years in the NBA, SU Hall of Fame guard Carl Irvin, who was drafted by the Sonics, as well as Garfield High's Keith Harold, arguably the best player from Seattle not to play in the NBA. Richardson, who we affectionately called Doc because he resembled and had hops like the legendary Dr. J, would ironically be drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers, where he would team with the real Doc, Julius Erving himself. So I was there to see Richardson help the 76ers beat the Lakers and win their long-awaited first NBA championship, and Clint invited me to join the celebration.
Seattle basketball is special because you look at the young talent that has come out of here. Well, actually, you take it back to the Sonics days, man, with Spencer Haywood and Fred Brown, Slick Watts. Those are all the guys and the teams that I saw growing up.
Haywood was so good, he made the 1968 Olympic team while playing for Trinidad State Junior College in Colorado. His sophomore year at the University of Detroit, he led the nation in rebounding while scoring 32 points per game and wanted to turn pro, but was denied by the NBA. So he signed with the ABA's Denver Rockets, where he was Rookie of the Year and League MVP. The next year, Haywood signed with the Sonics, but the NBA would not honor his contract. Sonics owner Sam Showman argued the rule stipulating he had to wait until his college class graduated didn't apply since Haywood was already a pro. The NBA disagreed and stopped Haywood from playing. They would file suit and take Haywood versus the NBA all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of Haywood, and the ruling, known as the hardship rule, opened up early draft possibilities seized by many of today's current NBA stars.
I just think when you talk about the impact that one guy had maybe on a franchise, I think you have to say that title goes to Spencer Haywood. And it's real simple for me. There are a couple guys, Spencer Haywood in basketball and Curt Flood in baseball. And these guys are making a lot of money now and able to have a lot of the rights that they have in their collective bargaining agreements because of those two guys.
Some might say it was a towering space needle built for the 1962 World's Fair, but it was Haywood that really put Seattle on the map. Spencer Haywood, the 2-time All-NBA first-team selection with the Sonics, was Seattle's first great superstar. I would join Haywood and begin working for the Sonics as a ball boy in 1972, and the next year we would land another superstar in legendary Celtic Bill Russell, but this time as a coach. Russell was playful and funny and had this crazy laugh that was more like a cackle. But when it was time for business, he was a strict disciplinarian that carried a baseball bat to practice and kept it underneath his chair during the games.
He would come in during practice with a baseball bat and a carrot stick, letting us know he mean business. So I think that was just his little hype. He had that little hype going that he was a tough guy, you know, and we supposed been scared when he walked in. And most of us were. I was too. I know I was.
No story about Seattle basketball would be complete without Donald Earl Watts. Everybody called him Slick because of his slick bald head way before Michael Jordan made it fashionable. The undrafted free agent out of Xavier, Louisiana, with his trademark headband cocked to the side, would light up the city and the NBA with his sheer hustle and determination.
Having been a free agent is a tough job, but somebody got to do it. And I was chosen to be the one to do it, so it was a big year for me to come up and break the barrier that small college players that can't play, and I had to show them we could.
Watts went on to lead the NBA in steals and assists and became Seattle's ambassador of basketball. On my birthday, January 15, 1974, the NBA gave me a great gift and brought its All-Star game to Seattle. Detroit's Bob Lanier's 24 points and 10 rebounds would lead the West All-Stars in a competitive 134-123 victory over the Heat. I'll never forget picking up Bob Lanier's massive 22 shoes and saying to him, I could fit my whole family in these sneakers.
Well, I got to go to the games with you guys, and you and Daryl, and watch you guys come out with everybody's sneakers after the game. So it was a special time. I mean, just being around that. So I was always a Sonic fan.
Fans were feeling real special about the team in 1975 as the Russell-led Sonics made the playoffs, defeating Dave Bing's Detroit Pistons in a 3-game series, 2-1.
Well, it was always fun being the first. I remember Spencer Haywood, Bill Russell, Fred Brown, and myself. The city hadn't got the Seahawks and the Mariners, so we was the only thing rolling, something like Poland is now. So it was a big event for the city to beat the Detroit Pistons and get in the playoffs. And I remember that I got a picture at home with Bill Russell hugging me and tightly in his chest. And that's probably the last time he ever hugged anybody.
It was the first playoff victory in franchise history for the Seattle Supersonics.
We have enough guys that produce from 1999 to 2009 to have an NBA basketball team just with our local talent. So of course I would hope that we could get another franchise team and we could be right there, playoff team right there in the mix of everything.
In 1978, the Sonics did find themselves right there in the mix, this time making it all the way to the NBA championship versus the Washington Bullets. After being blown out in the 6th game at Washington, the Sonics returned home for Game 7, and I had to be there.
I had just got traded out of town, so I was back, and I still had a little pull to get us in the door. So it was fun to get a chance, get a young blood, go check it out, go check the guys. And it made me feel good in a lot of ways because even though I got traded, Gus and Dennis Johnson still today remain some of my best friends. You know, Jack Sigma. And these guys have always been friends of mine. So it was just fun to be able to go sit there with you and watch these guys compete.
The Sonics did compete, and Marvin the Human Eraser Webster put in a super performance, but they could not overcome an unbelievable 0 for 14 shooting night from Dennis Johnson. I watched from just behind the Sonics bench as Elvin Hayes and the Bullets would win the '78 NBA championship and celebrate on our own home court. But the very next year, the champagne flowed from the Sonics locker room as they defeated the Bullets at Washington in 5 games, and the city of Seattle went crazy. DJ redeemed himself and was named NBA Finals MVP. The 1979 Sonics are still the only franchise from Seattle to win a major pro sports championship.
What made those guys special, when you had a guy like Lonnie Shelton at his size and some of the things that he could do, that made the Sonic 79 team, the championship team, made them very special. And of course, Gus Williams, Dennis Johnson, Gus Williams, my all-time favorite Sonic. They were just such a great team. JJ running the point forward kind of started that whole point forward trend. It was a real special group.
And in Seattle, it rains so much that all you could really do is stay in the gym, other than opposed to maybe a state like California where football players, it's hot outside and they're outside getting better at football. But up in the state of Washington, we're a rainy city, so we're inside working on our game, trying to get better.
But even the football teams in Seattle were trying to get out of the rain as the Kingdome was built to house the new kid on the block, the NFL's Seattle Seahawks.
In '78, '79, when the Sonics were going to the championship and winning games, that's pretty much all Seattleites knew. I mean, the Seahawks were new, so it wasn't considered a real franchise to us. They were new, and nobody expected anything as far as winning. It was just later on in the late '80s where they started to, in the '80s when they started to win and get to the playoffs that people really took notice of football in Seattle.
And kids weren't trying so much to get to the NBA, but the NFL. Starting with All-Pro defensive back James Hasty and three-time Pro Bowl running back Eric Metcalf, a large group of players with roots from Seattle, like Super Bowl champion Corey Dillon, would explode onto the NFL scene.
In football, when you think about the numbers, you have hundreds of people on scholarship. That's the easiest way to get to college if you can do that. So people around this area just started playing football, and they were committed to that. Your big team, your NFL team is on the big stage. You get to see them on TV, like, oh, I want to be like Sherman Smith or Kurt Warner or Jim Zorn or those guys.
In 1987, the NBA, wanting to showcase their players on the big stage, chose Seattle's Kingdome as site for their NBA All-Star Game. I flew from LA to Seattle to be one of more than 34,000 people in attendance and witnessed the highest scoring All-Star Game ever. The West defeated the East 154-149 as Sonics' Tom Chambers, who had replaced an injured Ralph Sampson on the West team, was named the MVP with a huge assist from Magic Johnson.
And to be able to see Michael Jordan firsthand, I mean, you look back when they had the dunk contest here. The All-Star game was here, the dunk contest, and when Michael Jordan won it, the famous leaning dunk and all of that stuff. All those types of things, I think, are just fuel to get more and more interest in the game.
The game really got interesting in Seattle when the Sonics drafted Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. The Rainy City now had its own high-flying Rain Man in Kemp, a tough defensive-minded trash talker in Payton, and just the right coach in George Karl.
Growing up and just watching guys like Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and just seeing those type of guys, it just kind of made Seattle just that much of a better city to want to get better and to want to play. That's what guys like my age were growing up watching, going to those games, just seeing the Rain Man just dunk on night in and night out. Deadlift strength, hitting all those threes.
I mean, I remember when Sean was drafted by the Sonics. I worked for KJR Radio, and Sean was 19 years old. And I remember taking him down and interviewing him and his mom on the radio, playing the Bulls and Michael Jordan, who arguably the best basketball player ever. I remember it was just electric. And I think it took this city and basketball in this city to a different level. And kids saw that firsthand. They were right there.
Men, women, boys, and girls filed into the newly remodeled Key Arena to see Gary Payton go toe-to-toe with his airness, Michael Jordan, and watch Sean Kemp rain from the sky. The Sonics would battle Jordan and the Bulls and thrill the city, but could not reproduce the NBA championship of 1979.
That 96 Sonic group, even though they didn't win the championship, which a lot of teams didn't at that time because of a guy named Michael Jordan, I don't think that 79 group would have much success against the 96 group. That was a special, very talented group that, again, if it wasn't for Michael Jordan and the Bulls, would have been NBA champions.
When Rainier Beach High School's Doug Christie was taken in the 17th pick of the 1992 NBA draft out of Pepperdine, no one could imagine what would happen the next time a Seattleite would be taken in the first round. When the Atlanta Hawks drafted Franklin Hines' Jason Terry with the 10th pick out of Arizona in 1999, Terry would not only go on to win an NBA championship with the Dallas Mavericks, but usher in a new era of Seattle basketball players into the NBA.
It makes me smile every time I see the headband. It also makes me smile when Michael said that he shaved his head because of Slick White. So it's kind of fun when you get a little older to hear the young boys talk about the slicker.
I first started hearing about Rainier Beach High's Jamal Crawford in the late 90s, when he was in high school and I was living in Los Angeles. My friends and family back home kept telling me he was the best ever to come out of Seattle.
Jamal Crawford, as you can see with what he's doing in the NBA right now, could really do some special things on the basketball court and was really ahead of his time, and I don't think people really understood his game, and they really thought that he was just a hot dog and a guy trying to show off.
The moves that he was doing, he would throw it off the backboard on you and dunk it at any given moment. I guess I've never seen anybody stand in front of him before.
I was younger, but I remember all the Rainier Beach games I went to. I went to the game and watched Jamal. I just remember this tall, skinny guard with the ball and a yo-yo. like a dribbling like an N1 player, just shaking everybody. And, you know, he was always a team player. Never got on his teammates in a bad way. He just looked like he was out there having fun.
He would have been an NBA All-Star. Till this day, I still don't understand that on how he hasn't accomplished that yet. Because I've watched him forever, and I've never seen him be stopped when he's going his hardest. So that's the Seattle best right there.
On an MLK holiday weekend in 2001, I flew to Seattle to watch my nephew Daryl Taylor's Franklin team play Garfield and saw this kid Brandon Roy. My nephew boldly proclaimed about Roy, he's to the league. After a Jersey retiring career at Washington, Roy did go to the league and became Seattle's first homegrown NBA
Well, when
All-Star.
B. Roy entered the league, that was my favorite player to watch because his skill sets, he wasn't always the fastest, but he was one of the smartest on the court. I just liked how smooth he was on the court, his decision making, and how he made his teammates better.
In April of 2003, I traveled to the Tacoma Dome and watched Nate Robinson lead his Rainier Beach team to a 3A state championship.
It was just watching a freak athlete out there making people look stupid on the court. This short 5'9" guard with the jump higher than everybody on the court.
And then settled in to watch my nephew's Franklin team, led by Aaron Brooks, play in the 4A tournament. To win, they had to go through Rodney Stuckey and Adam Morrison.
The tournament, that was a real exciting time for me. That allowed us to get out and show out at the Tacoma Dome and running up against guys like Adam Morrison and Rodney Stuckey, not knowing that they were going to be NBA basketball players, but they were really good. Standout guys on their team.
But it was the standout guy on his team who led Franklin to the championship win.
It was almost like a movie, man. Just seeing how at times when my team would be down and he had a ball and he'd call that 4 low and you didn't know if he was going to just take you all the way to the basket or if he was just going to pull up for that knockdown three-pointer.
What is it about Seattle basketball? Why are so many players not only going pro, but
We got a
excelling?
lot of great inner city schools that produce a lot of good players every year. And I say the competition between the powerhouse schools, you got Rainier Beach, you know, Seattle Prep, O'Day, Franklin, Garfield. You know, each school wants to be the best every year, so it rises the competition up between every school.
The majority of coaches around here teach man-to-man defense, good man-to-man defensive principles, teach kids how to play hard, and they teach kids how to move without the ball. Instead of, you know, always teaching them what the next route is, there's a lot of time spent teaching kids how to properly play basketball in this area.
I was teaching Jason Terry in the 3rd grade, and to see him hold that trophy up, I just smiled. I said, it can happen by training. So I think the development reason we have so many players in the league is because we got so many people helping those guys, and these guys got somewhere to go. Gyms are open, and the leagues are open, and they keep a basketball in their hands.
Basketball state. Whenever we get a chance, we have a basketball tournament whenever we can find a reason to, and it's just exciting. And luckily, a lot of our local guys that's made it to the NBA, they come back and they do run these camps and they mentor these young guys in high schools, even some kids in middle school that have mentors. So just growing up, it's starting to become a rich tradition, basketball.
We had a lot of kids that were good enough to go on and play Division I basketball, but because of the lack of academic guidance, a lot of them had to go to junior colleges. A couple of guys I can use an example. On the basketball side, Roselle Ellis. On the football side, Corey Dillon. These are 2 guys that ended up playing Division I in their respective sports, but they went to JCs because academically there was something missing in their academic history that didn't allow them to go straight to Division I school.
Along with player skills and academic development, there has been the rise of successful AAU programs like Friends of Hoop and Seattle Rotary.
The AAU piece, our kids were not getting that type of exposure. Those that are familiar with the history of AAU/summer basketball in the city, there was one man running that whole piece in this city, and it wasn't being inclusive. It wasn't allowing all of the kids to have the opportunity to get out and be on the summer circuit, get that experience, and see what it takes to play at a higher level, whether it be college or if you have aspirations to play pro. see if you're good enough. How do you match up?
Ed Pepple kind of controlled who was going and what was happening, and there were very few city players that got the exposure. Nowadays you have ESPN, you have everything on the internet, and so there's so much more exposure and so much more year-round focus on the game.
But for every player that makes it, there's always one that everybody thinks should have, but didn't. Such is the case of Doug Wren. Wren would sign with powerhouse UConn, but was kicked off the team after his first season for several run-ins with the law and team violations. He came home, recommitted to Washington, became all Pac-10 first team and newcomer of the year. But after finishing the season 11-18, Coach Bob Bender was fired and Lorenzo Romar hired. Romar and Wren wouldn't see eye to eye and mutually agreed to part ways.
When I talked to my coach, Mike Bethea, he said he was an unbelievable athlete, an unbelievable player that should have definitely been in the NBA. And I know he went to the University of Washington. Some things happened, and from what I know, they said his attitude was his downfall.
Wren still had one more year of eligibility, but opted to enter the 2003 NBA draft and went undrafted.
And the NBA, granted, they will take a player. I mean, they talk about a good citizen, what have you, but at the end of the day, if a guy can play, they're going to find a spot for him. Doug was kind of that tweener, and making that transition where he had to handle the rock, where he had to shoot the jumper, I think limited him because he didn't have those skills to go to that level.
In 2009, he was convicted on 2 counts of second-degree assault with a gun, slamming the door on whatever was left of his NBA hoop dreams. Seemingly out of nowhere, the mayor of Seattle, Greg Nichols, would also find himself in court over the Sonics. Howard Schultz had sold the team to Clay Bennett and an Oklahoma City group, and fans of the team felt like he had made a deal with the devil himself.
And you had some businessmen, I think, that were kind of used to having their way, and when things didn't go their way, I think they just didn't want to roll up their sleeves and see what it was going to take to get an arena built. And so when they decided they didn't want to fight the fight to get the arena built, they sold. And they ended up selling the franchise to an ownership group from Oklahoma that blatantly lied about what their intentions were as far as keeping the team here in Seattle. They absolutely had minefields everywhere with just little things to keep the franchise from being successful.
When I moved back to Seattle in October 2004, I was attracted to basketball like a magnet and found myself regularly at Key Arena watching the Sonics. The previous year had been dismal, and fans disgruntled because they had traded fan favorite Gary Payton for Ray Allen. Attendance was among the league's lowest. But at the end of the 2005 season, with a new tandem of Allen and Rashard Lewis, the Sonics were in first place and headed to the playoffs. Fans once again packed Key Arena as they disposed of the Sacramento Kings in the first round and then took on the San Antonio Spurs. It's hard to describe the noise level and frenetic atmosphere inside Key Arena as I watched local product Luke Ridenour and arguably the best shooter in the history of the game, Ray Allen, give the eventual champion Spurs fits before losing a tough 6-game series. I was also there that April night when Allen sank 7 threes and broke the record for the most three-point field goals in a season. Off the court, the Sonics were also thrilling the community. The next season, while I was an assistant coach at my alma mater, Cleveland High, our basketball uniforms and equipment were stolen. Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis came to the rescue, purchasing new uniforms and equipment and shoes for our team. While at the same time, Clay Bennett was posturing to steal the team from Seattle and its fans.
Unfortunately, whether a local owner didn't step up or Howard Schultz and that ownership team didn't do the due diligence to say, we're going to make sure this team stays here. There's a lot of bitterness. There's a lot of anger in the city from a lot of people, and now it's a waiting game. Will we be able to get a new franchise here?
I used to actually rebound for Rashard Lewis out at the Jewish Community Center in Bellevue, or Mercer Island. So watching him play was kind of like, watching somebody I knew, not really knew because I was so young, but it was fun because he was so nice and humble. So I took great pride in going to the Sonics games and being a fan. So it was real fun to watch them. And when they left, the city of Seattle was heartbroken. It kind of felt like they took a piece of childhood because you grow up and You got players that you could look up to and model your game after, because everybody wanted to be Ray Allen. That was just a shuttle.
I think about Ray Allen and his sweet jump shot. I think about Rashard Lewis and the development he had as a high school kid to an all-star. I think about Luke Ridnour and playing high school just up north in Blaine and then wearing a Sonic jersey and how much work he did in the community. And I think of George Karl and all his efforts that he put into starting Friends of Hoop and really giving back at a local level to the community.
The Sonics franchise leaving is real personal because I was working for them at the time. And I got to be honest, I did not think it could happen, did not think it would happen, and was really personally, hurt by it, man. I mean, not because I lost a job, but because I didn't think it would ever happen. And the impact that it had on this city. I mean, you have this franchise that's been around 41, I think it was, years when they left.
When the Sonics left town, I was in disbelief because I didn't really ever think that would happen. I mean, of course, you hear about it in every league, and owners and teams threaten the league because they want a stadium built or they want a city to put more money into something, and so there's always a struggle with that as far as ownership and cities or states. And so I just thought that was just something that they were really going through just to get a new arena built, and then bam, they're gone, and it was unfortunate for the city because the city loved the Sonics. Kevin Durant had just came in; he was a Rookie of the Year, and everybody was excited about what he was going to possibly be doing in this city and for the city.
Kevin Durant was developing into the star Seattle needed to get back to its glory days. Kids were already looking up to him. Then boom, he was gone. Then found wearing something called an Oklahoma Thunder uniform. It would be tough to watch Durant and other former Sonic Russell Westbrook ascend through the playoffs in Oklahoma and not Seattle.
What really hurts is that shared history right now. So they talk about Oklahoma and, well, this team has been here before. No, they haven't been there before. That's Oklahoma. That's not Seattle, And so I think that, for me and a lot of fans, is a real sore point. And once a franchise comes back here, if I'm not mistaken, the deal is it will have the history and Oklahoma won't, which I think is the right thing. But right now, where it's kind of the shared history, it's a sore point, to say the least.
I think people that don't really understand how much joy that team gave to the city of Seattle over the years. And I don't know if everybody understands how many young men and women began to pick up a basketball because of their first experience with watching the Sonics or a Sonic interact in their neighborhood local level.
In the absence of the Sonics in the community, local pros like Will Conroy and Brandon Roy stand up.
Sweet. Hanging out with Jamal Crawford, he was the first guy I seen do like a backpack giveaway. I will always see him donate stuff to kids, put on basketball camps. And I just say, if I have a chance to be able to play in the NBA and have kids look up to me, then I want to give back that same way. So it's just, for me, it's just important. These kids watch us, they look up to us, and I think it's not only important to watch us on TV, but it's good to see us in person. So, to be able to come out here and shake their hands and talk to them and just meet them, I think it's important.
Billionaire hedge fund manager Chris Hansen, a native of Seattle, went out shaking hands and rallied Sonic fans around his $400 million new arena proposal. And now there's genuine hope of bringing a new NBA Supersonics team back to Seattle.
This was the best city in the world for sports, especially NBA basketball. And I'm sure David Stern gonna get us a team back before he leave the commissioner's office.
Even without a team in Seattle, Seattle is now known as a hotbed of basketball. Who will be in the next crop of ballers from the Emerald City to reign on the NBA scene? Will it be 2012 Big East tourney MOP Peyton Siva? UCLA's Big Josh Smith? Maybe Washington point guard Abdul Ghadi, who NBA scouts have followed since high school? How about Virginia shooter Joe Harris, who traveled 3 hours one way multiple times per week from Chelan to play for Seattle's Friends of Hoop? And it just might hit real close to home and include my latest nephew on the basketball scene, three-point specialist Sterling Carter, who's been working hard to help Seattle U back to Division I prominence.
We just finally got all of our kids out on the circuit so they could be seen. So the hotbed that we're considered now, the talent has always been here, but the process was not in place to give the kids the opportunity and exposure so that the rest of the country could recognize what a lot of us had already known. So with that being said, you now have from 99 to 2012, with Tony Roten being the last one, if I'm not mistaken, 16 first-round draft picks coming out of this area and out of the state of Washington. Seattle is between Clint Richardson and Jamal Crawford.
My favorite Sonic, I would have to say, really, because it was downtown Freddie Brown. That name in itself.
I watch a lot of Husky basketball now. That's my favorite team.
Being able to play in the same place where my favorite player Ray Allen played at is an unbelievable feeling. Knowing that I'm shooting a three where he might have shot a three.
How I feel about the Seattle U, UW rivalries, I feel it's bragging rights for the year.
It will not be a rivalry until Seattle U beats them again. Until then, it's just a great inner city match.